The sky tore open with thunder, spilling heavy rain over the empty dirt road. The world felt abandoned, as if even the wind had run away to hide from what was coming. Captain Elias kept walking, his boots sinking in the mud with each slow step. He had no reason to be out there in the middle of the night. It's not beyond the safety of the colony walls, but something deep inside told him to keep going. Maybe it was the silence between the storms. Maybe it was the strange feeling that someone or something was out there watching him. His flashlight cut a narrow path through the darkness, the beam shaking slightly in his hand. Then he heard it, a sound that did not belong in the rain. It was deep, low, and full of pain, a growl that made the air vibrate. Elias froze, scanning the shadows, the noise pulling him like a hook toward the roadside ditch. His breath caught when he saw it, lying half in the mud, half in the water. It was a massive creature. Its fur was white, but streaked with black markings that twisted like living smoke. Golden eyes glowed faintly in the dark, and though its head was lowered, Elias could feel the power in it, like looking at a mountain that might decide to move. Blood ran down its side, mixing with the rain. For a moment, neither moved. Elias felt the cold rain run down his face, felt his pulse in his throat. Now, this was no animal he had ever seen, not in any book, not in any colony database. He knew enough about the wild zones beyond the walls to understand one thing. If this creature had survived out here, it was dangerous. Every instinct screamed at him to turn back, but something in the way it looked at him steady, unblinking, made him hesitate. There was no wild panic in those eyes, no hunger, just pain, and something else. He took one slow step forward. Boots squelching in the mud, the beast's ears twitched, its body tensed, ready to fight or run, but it didn't move. Elias crouched, keeping his hands visible. "Easy," he said softly, though his voice was lost in the storm. His mind was already trying to solve the impossible question, how do you help something that could kill you before you even blink? The rain fell harder. Lightning flashed, and for a split second, Elias saw strange lines ripple across the creature's body symbols, glowing faintly beneath its fur, like the markings of some ancient language. His breath caught. They faded again as quickly as they came. He thought maybe it was his imagination, a trick of the light, but deep inside, he knew it wasn't. The creature lowered its head again, a shiver running through its frame. Elias didn't have long. He slid his arms under its massive body, expecting it to thrash or bite, but it only gave a low, rumbling growl, more warning than attack. He gritted his teeth and lifted. The weight almost crushed him. It was like carrying a boulder wrapped in fur. His legs trembled, his back screamed, but he forced himself upright. The beast's head rested against his shoulder, its hot breath hitting his neck. Step by step, Elias staggered forward, each foot sinking into the muddy road. The rain plastered his hair to his face, blurred his vision, but he kept moving. His shack was almost 2 miles away, 2 miles carrying something that could break him in half without even trying. He didn't think about what would happen if it woke up angry. He didn't think about why he was doing this. He just knew leaving it there would mean its death. For some reason that felt wrong in a way he couldn't explain. The road seemed endless. His muscles burned. Not more than. Once, he thought about dropping it, letting the storm take care of the rest. But every time that thought came, he felt those golden eyes in his mind, watching him, testing him. Somewhere in the distance, a flash of light cut through the night sky, not lightning this time. A silent shape moved behind the clouds, to steady. To be natural, Elias blinked up at it, but the rain blurred it away before he could be sure what he'd seen. By the time his shack appeared through the downpour, Elias was gasping for breath. He pushed the door open with his shoulder, stepped inside, and lowered the beast gently onto the floor. The metal walls shook with the wind outside. The shack smelled of damp air and rust. He pulled an old blanket over the creature, though it barely covered its size. Its eyes half closed, but still tracked his every move. Elias found his first aid kit, mostly meant for humans, not alien predators. He cleaned the wound as best he could, water and blood mixing into the dirt-stained floor. The beast growled once when he touched a deep cut, and Elias froze, hand hovering in midair. Instead, it lay still, muscles tight, as though forcing itself to trust him. When the work was done, Elias sat back against the wall, exhausted. His clothes were soaked, his hands shaking. The creature's breathing slowed, heavy but steady, outside. The storm kept raging, but inside there was only the sound of rain on metal. His eyes drifted shut for a moment. Just a moment, and that's when he saw her. In his mind, clear as sunlight, a woman stood before him. She was tall, her skin pale like moonlight, her hair dark and flowing, crowned with silver and red jewels. Her eyes burned like fire, and her lips curved in the smallest, most dangerous smile. She didn't speak. She only looked at him. Then at the beast lying at his feet. Elias woke with a start. The creature's golden eyes were fixed on him, unblinking. Somewhere in those eyes he thought he saw the same fire he'd just seen in the woman's. The hair on his arms stood up. He didn't know it yet, but the moment he'd lifted that beast from the mud, his life had crossed into a path that could not be turned back. A path that would pull him into the center of a war he had no idea existed. The storm had calmed by morning, but the air still felt heavy, like the world was holding its breath. The rain had stopped tapping against the metal walls, replaced by the low hum of the colony's far-off generators. Inside the shack, Captain Elias moved slowly, careful not to wake the beast lying across the floor. It was too big for the small space its back pressed against the wall. Its tail curled around the corner, its head resting on a folded piece of cloth. Even in sleep, it looked powerful. Its muscles shifted with each breath, and the strange black markings on its white fur seemed to move ever so slightly, as if alive. Elias crouched beside it, studying the wound he had cleaned the night before. The bleeding had slowed, but the deep slash across its side looked unnatural, too clean for a wild animal attack. He thought of the symbols he had seen glowing under its fur during the storm. Those brief flashes like writing from a forgotten language. He wanted to believe it was just a trick of the lightning, but his gut told him otherwise. The beast stirred, opening its golden eyes. They caught the dim light like molten metal, locking onto Elias with a steady, calculating stare. For a moment, neither moved. Then slowly, the beast raised its head, sniffing the air. Its gaze shifted to the closed door, as if it could sense something outside. Elias followed its look, his muscles tightening. The colony was still a few miles away, but out here, even one wrong visitor could mean trouble. He poured a small tin. "Cup of water?" Placing it on the floor. Beast glanced at it, then at him, before leaning forward and lapping it up with slow, deliberate movements. It wasn't the wild, desperate drinking of an animal in need. It was measured, controlled, almost polite. Elias felt a strange chill as he realized he was starting to think of it not as an it, but as a he. A sudden noise outside made him freeze. A distant hum, faint vibration through the ground. It grew steadily, and Elias knew it wasn't the sound of rain or wind. It was an engine. He moved to the window, careful to stay out of sight. Out, beyond the trees, a small patrol craft glided low. Out, its black hull marked with an insignia he had only seen once before, during the border wars. The soldiers on that craft didn't belong here, not unless they were looking for something. Elias's first thought was to hide himself. His second was to look at the beast, which was now standing, tail stiff, eyes locked on the same sound. The fur along its neck was bristling, but there was no fear, only readiness. It took one slow step toward the back wall of the shack, the boards creaking under its weight. The patrol ship passed by without slowing. But Elias knew they weren't just randomly flying out here. This road was nothing but empty land, old hunting grounds, and the dangerous wild zones. If they were here, they were tracking something. And it didn't take much to guess what. That night, Elias built a hiding space. He moved the floor panels. In the back of the shack, revealing the narrow gap underneath where pipes and old storage crates lay. It wasn't much, but it was deep enough for the beast to lie low if soldiers came knocking. The beast didn't resist when Elias motioned for it. Too stepped down into the space. It moved with surprising grace for its size, curling up in the shadows as Elias covered it again. He didn't know why it trusted him enough to hide without a fight. Later, when the sun dipped behind the mountains, Elias tried to rest. But each time he closed his eyes, he saw her again, the woman from his dream. Her crown glinted like sharpened metal, her voice silent but heavy in his mind. He had never seen her before, yet her presence felt ancient, as if she belonged to a part of history that humans had forgotten. She stood on a dark balcony in his vision, watching something far below. Her eyes narrowed, and he followed her gaze to see the beast standing there, uninjured, strong, and unchained. The woman smiled slow, deliberate hand, then her gaze turned directly to him. He woke with a gasp, the image burning in his mind. The beast was no longer under the floor. The morning began with a sound no one in the colony ever wanted to hear. A long, deep siren rolled through the air, shaking the metal walls and making the ground feel alive underfoot. Elias sat up instantly, heart pounding. Outside, the steady hum of everyday life was gone, replaced by shouting, hurried footsteps, and the metallic clank of security gates locking into place. The beast beside him lifted its head, ears twitching, its golden eyes narrowing as if it understood the danger. Better than he did, Elias moved to the window, careful to keep his shadow hidden. From his shack on the edge of the settlement, he could see the sky beyond the rooftops. Dark shapes were cutting through the cloud ships, fast and heavy, their hulls painted black with jagged crimson lines. These weren't the colony's patrol craft. These were warships, and not just any kind. His breath caught when he saw the symbol etched on their sides, silver crown wrapped in the coils of a serpent. He had seen that mark once before. Years ago, during the siege of the mining colonies in the Outer Rim, people still told stories about it in whispers about the fleets that came without warning. Crushing defenses, taking what they wanted, and leaving entire planets in ruins. The stories always ended with the same name, spoken like a curse: the War Queen. The ground trembled as one of the ships descended toward the colony's central square. Elias stepped back from the window, his mind racing. This was no coincidence. Patrol ships, yesterday, warships today. And the way the beast was watching the sky still tense, almost expectant, told him exactly what his instincts already knew. They were here for it. Through the thin walls, voices carried from the road outside. Soldiers, their boots hit the dirt in a steady rhythm, and every few seconds, a harsh electronic buzz sounded scanners. Elias heard one soldier speak into a comm unit. Negative here, moving to next sector. Another voice crackled back, cold and sharp. Orders are clear. Find the target. Lethal force permitted on anyone who hides it. Elias's stomach twisted. Lethal force. They weren't just going to take the beast, they were ready to kill anyone standing in their way. He looked at it now, lying low but alert, muscles rippling under its fur. It wasn't trembling, it wasn't afraid. If anything, there was a strange focus in its eyes, like a soldier waiting for the right moment to move. Elias crouched beside it. You understand me, don't you? He whispered, almost without thinking. The beast blinked slowly, and for a moment, he could swear it was an answer. A sudden flash of light burst through the cracks in the wall, bright, red, and quick. The colony's main defense batteries had just opened fire. The ground shook as a shockwave rolled through the air, making the shack's metal frame groan. Elias grabbed his pack, stuffing in what little food and water he had. If the War Queen's forces were sweeping the outer sectors, he didn't have long before they reached him. Outside, the siren kept wailing. Smoke began to rise in the distance. Curling into the gray morning sky, Elias slipped open the floor hatch he had built and motioned for the beast to hide. But it didn't move. Instead, it stood, its gaze locked on the door. A low growl rose from its throat, so deep it vibrated through the floor. Elias froze, and then silence. The siren cut out. The air seemed to hold its breath. A voice came through the colony's loudspeakers, calm but laced with steel. "People of Outpost 12, you have something that belongs to me?" The voice was female, smooth and dangerous, each word carrying the weight of absolute authority. Elias felt the hair rise on the back of his neck. He knew without asking. This was her. The War Queen. "I will take it back," the voice continued. "If you resist, I will burn this place to the ground. You have until nightfall." The loudspeakers clicked off, leaving only the sound of the wind. Elias backed away from the door. The beast had lowered its head slightly, eyes still glowing in the dim light. He didn't know what kind of connection existed between it and a woman who had just threatened an entire colony, but it was enough to make her bring warships across the stars to get it back. He thought about opening the back wall and slipping into the woods before the search parties closed in, but a deep unease settled over him. The War Queen's voice hadn't been a bluff. If she didn't get what she wanted, people would die. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Outside, the sound of marching boots drew closer. They were moving in formation, sector by sector. Elias could already hear them calling out to one another, clear, clipped commands. The search was tightening, and yet the beast still didn't hide. It stood beside him, its fur bristling like it was waiting for a fight. Elias swallowed hard. Maybe he should have been more afraid of what he had brought into his home. Maybe he still didn't understand what it was. But one thing was certain now: keeping it had made him an enemy of the most dangerous woman in the galaxy. As the first shadow passed across his window, Elias reached for his blaster. He had no plan, no way to win this fight. But the thought of handing the beast over, of letting the War Queen have it, felt wrong in a way he couldn't explain. The knock came hard, sharp, final, and Elias knew the choice he made in the next few seconds would decide whether he lived, or whether the colony burned before the day was over. The War Queen's voice still lingered in the air, like the echo of a blade being drawn. Outside, the knock on Elias's door came again, harder. More impatient this time. "Patrol," a voice barked. "Open up." Elias stayed still, his back pressed against the wall, blaster tight in his hand. He could hear the shuffle of boots on wet dirt, the faint hiss of scanning equipment. The beast stood beside him, motionless, except for the slow, deliberate flick of its tail. Its golden eyes never left the door. Then came the sound Elias feared most, a metallic click, followed by the hiss of hydraulics. They were forcing the lock. He had seconds, at best. He glanced at the floor hatch, but the beast still refused to hide, as if the idea of retreat was an insult. Elias's muscles tensed, ready to fire if he had to, when something unexpected happened. Voice calm, commanding, female spoke from somewhere far above, carried by the colony's loudspeakers. "Sector 1, report." The soldiers outside froze, their movements halting instantly. The voice was not a commander's, it was hers. The War Queen. "No sign of the target," one of the soldiers replied into his cum. The silence that followed was heavy. Then the War Queen spoke again, her words colder this time. "Search harder. No home is to be left unchecked. If you find resistance, remove it." Elias's stomach nodded. Remove it. That meant exactly what it sounded like. The door lock gave way with a crack, swinging inward to reveal two soldiers in black and crimson armor. Their faces were hidden behind mirrored visors, their weapons already raised. Elias kept his blaster lowered, pretending calm. "Problem?" he asked his voice. "Even inspection," one soldier said. His partner's visor shifted slightly, scanning the room with a faint red beam. Elias stepped aside, letting them walk past. His heartbeat thudded in his ears. The beast didn't move, but its fur bristled, its eyes burning. The scanner passed over the beast for only a second before flashing red. Sir stiffened. "Sir?" he began, but never finished. The beast let out a sound unlike anything Elias had heard before. Deep, resonant growl that seemed to shake the air. The soldier stumbled back a step, his weapon lowering slightly. The scanner's light flickered, as if something in the beast's body interfered with it. Step away from it. The second soldier ordered Elias, his tone sharper now. Before Elias could reply, a loud voice boomed from the cum on the soldier's wrist. Alive. Do not damage it. Restrain and return immediately. The soldier's posture shifted. His weapon lowered even more. It was clear now they weren't allowed to harm the beast. Whatever orders they'd been given, bringing it back. Alive was the priority. That was his moment. Elias moved fast. He swung the butt of his blaster into the nearest soldier's helmet, sending him stumbling into the wall. The beast leaped, hitting the second soldier with a force that knocked the air from his lungs. The shack erupted into chaos shouts, crashing metal, the sharp crack of Elias's blaster firing a warning shot into the ceiling. They didn't stay to see if reinforcements were coming. Elias grabbed his pack and darted out the back. The beast closed behind. The cold air hit his face as they ran into the tree line, mud spraying under their boots and paws. Behind them, the soldiers were shouting into cums, calling in their position. Somewhere above, the low hum of a dropship began to grow louder. The forest swallowed them quickly. But Elias knew it wouldn't hide them for long. The War Queens. Forces were efficient, relentless. If they were on foot now, they'd have air support within minutes. The beast moved beside him in long, fluid strides, as silent as the rain dripping from the trees. Elias could feel its strength, its control, like it was holding back from unleashing its full power. They reached a narrow gully, the ground slick with moss and water. Elias jumped down first, landing hard, and turned just in time to see the beast leap after him in one smooth motion. The sound of the dropship was closer now, its engines cutting through the forest's quiet. He could see flashes of red light sweeping across the treetop search beams. Elias pressed his back against the gully wall, pulling the beast into the shadows with him. He held his breath as the beam passed overhead, lighting up the wet leaves. In a crimson glow, the dropship slowed, hovering, scanning. The rain turned heavier as the forest thickened, each drop cold enough to sting Elias's skin. His clothes clung to him, heavy with mud, but he didn't slow. Every step was a fight against roots and slippery ground, yet the beast moved as if the terrain didn't exist. Its breath came steady, controlled. Every few moments it would stop, ears twitching, eyes scanning the shadows as if it could hear things far beyond Elias's senses. They had been moving for hours. Elias's legs burned, but the memory of the soldiers kicking in his door kept him going. He kept replaying their words alive. Do not damage it. That meant the beast wasn't just a target. It was important. Important enough that the War Queen's voice had cut into their comes to issue direct orders. He wanted answers. The beast gave none. It walked when he walked, stopped when he stopped, but its eyes never revealed thought or fear. And yet Elias could feel something like the faintest thread pulling him toward it. Not trust, not yet, but connection. They reached a narrow ridge overlooking a deep valley. Mist curled through the trees below, and somewhere far off, a waterfall roared like distant thunder. Elias crouched, scanning the valley for movement. That's when the beast stepped forward, lowering its head to the ground, sniffing the air. A low rumble rose in its chest. Elias's hand tightened around his blaster. "What is it?" he whispered, though he knew it wouldn't answer. The beast's gaze shifted not down the valley, but up, toward the sky. A faint vibration reached Elias's boots before he heard it, the hum of engines. Dropships, more than one. They weren't searching blindly this time. They were coming in formation. Elias grabbed the beast's fur, pulling it back into the cover of the trees. The ships broke through the clouds, black shapes cutting across the mist. Searchlights flared to life, slicing the valley into shifting columns of red light, and then louder than the waterfall came a voice. Her voice. The War Queen. "This is your last chance, Elias Thorne. Surrender it to my soldiers, and you may yet live." Elias froze. She knew his name, not just his face, not just the coordinates of his last location. His name. He'd taken every job under false IDs. stayed off every registry, lived like a shadow for years. And yet she said it like she'd known it all along. The beast turned to look at him then, its eyes sharp, searching his face. Elias stared back, heart pounding. "We move," he said, his voice barely more than breath. The forest floor turned treacherous as they descended the ridge. The dropships moved in wide arcs, their light sweeping in precise patterns. Each time a beam neared them, they pressed themselves into the mud, barely breathing until it passed. But the ships weren't alone. The first sign was the sound, a faint, high-pitched click. Elias stopped instantly, scanned the undergrowth and saw it, a glint of black metal, half buried under wet leaves. A drone. Small, almost silent, but its lens glowed faint red as it scanned. Elias shot it, the blaster's muffled crack lost under the sound of the waterfall. The drone sparked, collapsed, and began to smoke. That was a mistake. From deeper in the forest came an answering sound, the crunch of boots on wet ground, many of them moving fast. The soldiers were close, far closer than Elias had thought. He grabbed the beast's shoulder. "Run." They tore through the forest, branches whipping against Ilias's arms. Behind them, the sound of pursuit grew louder, shouts, snapping. Branches, the faint roar of another dropship coming in lower. Ilias's lungs burned, but adrenaline kept his legs moving. The beast suddenly veered left, leading him toward a massive fallen tree. Its roots had ripped a hole in the earth when it fell, leaving a dark space beneath. Without hesitation, the beast slid into the gap. Elias followed, belly down in the mud, pulling his blaster tight to his chest, through the tangle of roots. He saw boots appear, black armor soaked from the rain. Soldiers spread out in a search pattern, their visors casting faint red glows across the ground. One of them knelt, brushing mud aside with his glove. His hand stopped on something prints, large clawed prints. Elias held his breath. The soldier's head tilted, then he spoke into his found their trail. The voice that answered wasn't the War Queen Zet, was a man's, cold and precise. "Hold position. She is coming herself." Elias's blood ran. Cold? She was here. Not in orbit, not watching from a ship here in the forest. The soldiers didn't move, didn't search. They were waiting. The beast shifted beside him, muscles tightening. Its tail brushed against Elias's arm, and he could feel the power. Coiled inside it, ready to explode. For a moment, Elias thought it might break cover and fight. But then, slowly, its breathing steadied again. It was waiting too. Above the trees, another hum began to grow, a deeper, heavier engine than the dropships. A shadow passed over the canopy, blotting out what little light filtered through the clouds. Rain fell harder, drumming against armor, mud and roots, somewhere beyond the wall of soldiers. A new sound rose. Footsteps, slow, deliberate. And though Elias couldn't see her yet, he knew. The War Queen had arrived. The soldiers stepped back as she came through the trees. The forest seemed to shrink around her presence. She wore no helmet, no armor, heavy enough to slow her steps, just a black command cloak that hung to her boots, wet from the rain, but unmoving in the windless air. Her eyes locked on the gap beneath the fallen tree instantly, as if she'd known exactly where Elias was hiding from the moment she landed. "Elias Thorne," she said, her voice calm, steady, but sharp enough to cut through the sound of rain. "Come out." Elias didn't move. The beast shifted beside him, low growl rumbling through the roots. Her gaze shifted slightly, acknowledging the sound but not reacting to it. She took another slow step forward. "You think I can't reach?" "You hear?" she asked. "I've spent years hunting things that hide better than you." Her voice carried the weight of command, no shouting, no threat, but every word pressed harder against the air. "And I always catch them." Elias finally moved, pushing himself out from under the roots. Mud clung to his arms as he rose, blaster in hand, but pointed at the ground. He kept his eyes on her, searching for weakness. There was none. Her face was unreadable, carved from stone, and the rain didn't seem to touch her. "Why me?" he asked. Her lips curved on into a smile, but into something colder. "Not you. It." She tilted her head toward the beast still crouched under the roots. You've been following it for hours, but you have no idea what you're walking beside. Ilias's grip on his blaster tightened. Then tell me. She took another step, closing the distance until only 10 paces separated them. The soldiers. Around her stood perfectly still, as if even their breathing was controlled. It's the last of its kind, she said. And the key to unlocking something your little mind can't imagine? Elias shook his head. Then why not kill it and take whatever you want? For the first time, her expression changed a flicker of something dangerous. Because dead, it's useless. Live, it can lead us to the others. The others? Elias glanced back at the beast. Its golden eyes were fixed on her, unblinking. She took one final step closer, her boots sinking into the mud just feet from him. You're standing between me and history, Elias. Move aside, and I'll let you. Walk away. You have my word. He laughed once, a short, humorless sound. Your word? I've seen what you do to people you don't need anymore, her eyes narrowed. Then you've also seen what I do to people who stand in my way. She didn't draw a weapon. She didn't have to. The air between them was already charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. Elias didn't answer. He didn't move. The War Queen tilted her head slightly, studying him. Do you even know why it let you follow it this far? He stayed silent. It's not because you're fast or clever. It's because it wants you to. It thinks you can. Help it. But the truth. She glanced at the beast again. That it's leading you exactly where I need you to go. Something cold slid down Elias's spine. She was too confident. Too certain, and then he realized she wasn't chasing them. She was hurting them. The beast seemed to sense the same thing. In a blur of motion, it lunged from under the roots, placing itself between Elias and the War Queen. Soldiers raised their weapons instantly, but she held up a single hand. No one fired. She met the beast's eyes. For a moment, the forest went still. Even the rain seemed quieter. And then she said, softly but clearly, "It's been a long time." Ilias's breath caught. She knew it. Not just what it was, she knew it. The beast's growl deepened. Not with fear, but something Elias could only describe as anger. Its tail lashed the mud, claws digging into the earth. The War Queen's voice stayed calm. You can come willingly. Or the beast roared, the sound shaking the ground under Ilias's boots. Soldiers tensed, weapons humming, but she didn't flinch. She simply finished her sentence. Or I take you by force. And that was the moment the forest exploded. Into chaos, the beast lunged, not at the soldiers, but directly at her. She moved faster than Elias thought humanly possible, sidestepping with the grace of someone who had fought 1,000 battles. The beast's claws tore a trench into the mud where she had been standing. Soldiers opened fire, red bolts lighting. The mist, but the beast, moved like smoke, darting through them, scattering the formation. Elias fired at the soldiers, dropping 2, before a third tackled him into the mud. They struggled, rolling toward the edge of the ridge. The moment hung for only a breath. Elias on the ridge, the War Queen unmoving, the beast crouched and ready. Then everything shattered into motion. The beast leapt again, a flash of muscle and claws. The War Queen didn't back away this time. She stepped into the attack, catching its front leg with a brutal twist that made the ground shake. The beast roared, snapping its head around, jaws inches from her face, but she slipped free. Spinning away with a precision that spoke of training far beyond any soldier Elias had seen. Blaster fire lit the rain-soaked trees. Elias ducked behind a trunk, returning shots toward the soldiers trying to encircle them. The forest turned into a blur of red bolts and moving shadows. Every time a soldier got close, the beast was there, its claws tearing through armor like paper. But the War Queen didn't order a retreat. She moved with the battle, always staying just out of reach, always driving the beast toward the ridge's edge. It wasn't random. She was steering it, step by step, forcing it into a position she wanted. Elias could see it now. She'd done this before, many times. Elias. The beast's golden eyes locked on him between swings of its massive tail. He didn't know how, but he understood the message. Move, now. He broke cover, sprinting toward the beast. A soldier stepped into his path, rifle raised, but Elias slid in the mud. Kicking the weapon from the man's hands and smashing the butt of his blaster into the side of his helmet, the beast roared again this time.
Out.
At the War Queen, she stood perfectly still protecting the weak, she said quietly. The words weren't meant for Elias. The beast lunged a third time, this one wilder, more desperate. The War Queen dodged, but not completely. The claws tore across her cloak, revealing the gleam of strange black armor beneath. She didn't even glance at the damage. You haven't changed, she said, and that will get you killed. Something in her tone made Elias hesitate. There was no hatred there, no anger, just certainty. The beast seemed to hear it too. Its growl deepened, and for the first time, Elias thought he saw doubt flicker in those golden eyes. Then, through the storm of blaster fire, the War Queen called out not to her soldiers but to the beast. Do you remember the mountains? The fire that night. Who saved you? Elias froze. The beast stopped moving for half a second, long enough for her to close the gap. She slammed a device against its side. It hissed and sparked, a blue net of energy flaring into existence around the beast's body. The roar that followed shook the entire ridge. Trees swayed. Birds exploded from the canopy in a screaming cloud. The net tightened, crackling against the beast's skin, forcing it to its knees. No. Elias charged forward, firing at the device. A bolt hit its edge, sparks flying, but it didn't break. 2 soldiers tackled him before he could get closer. He hit the ground hard, mud filling his mouth, boots pressing into his back. The War Queen knelt in front of the struggling beast. Rain streaked down her face, but her eyes stayed fixed on it. I told you, she said softly, I would find you again. The beast's growl was weaker now, its muscles straining against the crackling net. But even in pain, its gaze burned into hers with pure defiance. You could have stayed hidden, she continued, but you didn't. You wanted to be found. Elias fought against the soldiers holding him down, rage boiling in his chest. Let it go, shouted. The War Queen glanced at him for the first time since the fight began. You think you're protecting it, she said, but you don't understand what it is or what it's done. Her words cut through the rain like a blade. Before Elias could answer, the beast let out a sound that wasn't just a roar. It was almost a word, deep and rough, but human in its shape. The War Queen's expression hardened. Yes, she said quietly. Tell him. Elias went still. His mind struggled to make sense of what he'd heard. The beast spoke against 2 short, guttural sounds. Elias didn't know the language, but he knew the tone. It was a warning. The War Queen stood, the net still holding tight around the beast. Elias, she said, you're standing between me and the only thing that can stop what's coming. Lightning split the sky behind her, and for the briefest moment, Elias saw the truth in her face. She wasn't here for glory. She wasn't here for power. She was here because she was afraid, and that terrified him more than anything else. The rain fell harder, drumming against leaves and armor. The net around the beast flickered, sparks jumping in the wet air. Elias could see its muscles trembling, but not in weakness, in pure fury. The War Queen's soldiers closed in, rifles raised, ready to finish the capture. Elias struggled in the mud, the weight of 2 armored troops pressing him down. Don't do this, he shouted, but his voice was drowned by the storm. Then the beast moved. It didn't roar this time. It went silent, every muscle pulling against the crackling energy at once. The net flared blinding blue, the air smelling of ozone and burning metal. For a heartbeat, the whole forest seemed to pause, and then the net shattered. The blast threw the soldiers back in all directions. Elias felt the force hit him like a wall, knocking the men off his back. He rolled, coughing mud in his mouth, and looked up in time to see the beast land heavily in front of him, placing its massive body between him and the War Queen. Her face remained calm, but her eyes narrowed. So, you've grown stronger. The beast lowered its head, growl vibrating through the ground. Before either could move, The forest itself seemed to shift. The wind carried a strange, low hum like hundreds of wings beating together. Trees swayed, not from the storm, but from something moving through them. The War Queen's head turned sharply. "They're early," she murmured. Elias frowned. "Who's early?" She didn't answer. She raised her hand, signaling her soldiers into a defensive arc. Their eyes darted to the shadows beyond the ridge. Then the first shape emerged. It wasn't human. It wasn't even like the beast. Tall, thin, its skin a pale, glassy gray that reflected the lightning. Its face had no mouth, only a long vertical slit that opened with a hiss. More followed, dozens of them, stepping silently through the rain, surrounding the ridge like predators closing in on prey. Elias felt his heart race. "What are they?" War Queen finally looked at him. "The reason I came." One of the gray creatures moved closer. It's strange, jointless arms bending in impossible ways. The beast's growl deepened into something primal, something Elias had never heard from it before. "They're not here for me," the War Queen said. "They're here for it." Nearest creature hissed again, and this time the sound carried. Words broken, distorted, but clear enough. "Give us the key." Elias turned to the War Queen. "Key? What key?" Her gaze shifted to the beast. Lightning lit the ridge, and Elias saw the truth in the beast's eyes. It knew the gray. Creatures moved closer. Rain dripped from their smooth heads, their long claws curling in anticipation. The War Queen's soldiers opened fire, red bolts slicing through the storm, but the creatures moved too fast, twisting their bodies in impossible angles. Dodging every shot, one leaped forward, slamming into a soldier and snapping his rifle in half. Another grabbed a second soldier by the neck and hurled him into a tree so hard the trunk cracked. The beast lunged, tearing one of the gray things apart with a single swipe. Black fluid sprayed into the rain. The other creatures didn't retreat. They rushed forward all at once. "Elias." The War Queen's voice was sharp, commanding. "Stay behind me." But Elias didn't move. He grabbed a fallen rifle, firing into the swarm. Every hit slowed them, but it wasn't enough. It just kept coming. The beast fought like a storm. Unleashed claws tearing, tail smashing, jaws crushing. But for every one it brought down, two more emerged from the trees. The War Queen moved like a blade in human form, cutting through the attackers with terrifying speed. Her armor sparked with each strike, her cloak shredded by claws and rain. But even together, they were being pushed back toward the cliff. The largest of the gray creatures stepped forward. Taller than the beast itself, its body rippling like liquid glass. Its voice hissed through the storm. "The key belongs to us." The beast roared in answer, its golden eyes blazing. It stepped in front of Elias, placing itself between him and the towering enemy. Elias looked at it, chest heaving, mind spinning. "You're the key?" The War Queen didn't take her eyes off the giant creature. Not what? Who? The giant moved, and the world seemed to slow. The beast charged, the War Queen right beside it. Elias, without thinking, ran after them. The three forces collided in the center of the ridge. Rain exploded upward. Lightning flashed. The sound of claws against armor filled the night. And somewhere, deep in the forest, another sound began. Two rise a distant, rumbling roar that didn't belong to the beast. Something even bigger was coming.